podcast land? It's your girl Nisha, and welcome back to another episode of Laughing and Crying. We back. This is a podcast that values our relationships, including the ones we have with ourselves. You guys, like that is so important. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I guarantee you're gonna have some fun. And on today's show, we're gonna start out with let me tell you a story, and then we're gonna have a conversation about communication. Like what? Who knows how to do that? Not me. No, I don't really know it, but we're gonna talk about it. And I have somebody in the building.
Hello.
Yes, Marsha, say what's up to the people.
Hello, everybody.
Listen, Marsha is so dope. And I want to just like sit here and tell you all the ways that she's dope, like how she teaches dance, that she can dance, how she has these like amazing children whom I love, and how she's just like the kindest, sweetest human, and how she. Okay, I'm gonna stop. How about you tell the people what you do? Okay.
Oh, thank you, Disha.
Tell the people what you do. You're welcome.
Well, you started it off with the dance. I do teach dance. I've been teaching dance to little girls since 2004. I don't even want to. I don't do math in my head, and time is just gone.
Oh.
And I'm currently teaching at Order My Steps, and I have the 7 to 9-year-olds, and my daughter and I are actually like the director likes to call us the mother-daughter duo because we teach the class together. So it's a really good time there. So I do teach ballet to beautiful little girls.
Oh my
gosh. And when I'm not doing that, then you'll catch me in a contemporary class, ballet class. My daughter's trying to get me to take tap. I was like, well, why not? You only live once. We'll see how that goes.
Right.
You know.
So you're telling me you still do ballet? Like
I still do it, but to be honest with you, I've actually in my free time dancing, I've actually fallen more in love with contemporary. So I do more contemporary now than I did back then. I don't know, something about contemporary. It's just, I don't know.
Does it like communicate emotion for you?
Yeah. And it's very therapeutic. Yeah.
Oh, girl, I used to sit there and watch them so you could dance and just cry. Like, do you know what this means?
They tell stories.
They do. They do. Yes. That's awesome.
When I'm not doing that, I am a wife and mother. Got three wonderful children. Love them with all my heart. They always hearing from me telling them I love them so much because I do. And they're grown now.
All grown. You hear me?
They still my babies. But and then outside of that, you'll see me getting some iconic shoots together. I'm the founder of Iconic Beautiful Voices. I love celebrating women and women's beauty because beauty comes in all forms, shades, and sizes. So I like to just embrace all women and their beauty and just spoil them. We do shoots and do questionnaires so that women can connect and know that they're not the only ones that feel a certain way about themselves. And it's just a good time to connect.
It is. And I just love that you do that. Like, what got you into that?
It's the funniest thing because I just I had experiences because I modeled back in the day, and I would get casting calls and I would go and do these paid jobs, and it was just interesting to be in a room with all these beautiful women, all shades, different looks, and sometimes women can pick themselves apart and other women apart. And, that always got under my skin because I was like, why can't we all just celebrate each other's beauty because we're all beautiful? God didn't make any mistakes when he made us. So why can't we just celebrate all of our beauty? And it just kind of carried over into my adulthood. I don't know if it's one of those things where it's just kind of one of those things where you noticed it and it just kind of carried over and it never left you. And then one day I was just like, it literally, I kid you not, I was just like, you know what, I'm going to celebrate women. Oh, I can do shoots. Oh my God, and we can do this. And it just kind of just spiraled into this photographer, makeup artist, and then the questions just came. I can't explain it. I guess you could say one of those things where, God gave it to you, and I had these questions that, the women answer. And that's actually my favorite part. When I get the answers for the questions that are the answers to the questions sent back to me, I get emotional every last one of them because everybody has something different. All of it's beautiful. And then it's like whenever I put it out and other women read it, somebody can connect to that woman's story in
Yeah.
some way. And it's like we're helping each other versus being in that casting call room and like picking each other apart.
Right. Networking and building
Mhm.
relationships, which I can
Yes,
relate to because I am an iconic, beautiful woman as well.
yes, you are.
See my shoot. I did one. I look cute.
She was killing it. She killed it. Let me tell you, we were excited to get that out. I was like, "Do it, Nisha. She's ready." We
Y'all know I'm a fool. You already know
loved
I'm a fool.
loved every
Um,
minute of it.
but I think what's so wonderful is that it does help build relationships. I've built relationships from women that are in your presence who are under just that umbrella of the love that you're pouring out. And
Mhm.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And that just kind of goes back to why I started this podcast. If anyone is new, started the podcast to help people foster and build healthy relationships because I didn't really have that role model when I was younger, and I didn't have anyone who was going through it who wanted to speak about it in the midst of going through relational, I don't know, issues, struggles, decisions, who wanted to be vulnerable enough to share. And so I wanted to create a platform where I'm like, I'm gonna tell my story. I'm gonna get on here and be as vulnerable as I can be, and I want to give other people a platform to do it too because there are so many people with awesome stories who will never have a platform to share it.
Absolutely. This is important. Very important. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you, friend. Well, Marsha has heard about our story that we tell, so she's gonna like tell us a fun story so we can laugh a little bit. And I'm excited. Are you ready?
I am ready. All right. So one thing that wasn't shared when we're talking about the things that I do, I love, love, love hiking,
Okay.
like chasing waterfalls and all that. So
Yes.
it's become such a big thing that I'm a part of a group where we do hike. And then my husband and I always go on trips every year for our anniversary. And it's always tied to a hike. So
Yeah.
we'll get a cabin and it's like, okay, well, we picked out this cabin, but what's around the cabin? Because we want to go hiking.
Right.
So we get to this cabin this past anniversary, and it's beautiful. We're having a great time. And when I'm on our trip, I come back with an injury. Everybody is like, "What happened to you?" And I want to give this like huge story about how I fought a bear, like I saved somebody's life, something, you know.
That's what I would
But
do.
yeah, yeah. But what really happened while I was there?
Tell us.
To my defense, I did not live in this house. I was visiting, so it wasn't my first time there.
I did
Uh,
not live here. I need you to
I
know
did,
this.
yes, it wasn't my house. This is my first time here, so the layout was not my layout. It's beautiful though,
I love
but
this.
the stairs, the stairs in the cabin. There was the rail to come down the stairs. It was shy one step, like it stopped one step before you were actually finished coming down the stairs. And
OMG.
and I knew it because I got there early. However, it was late. It was time for us to go to bed. We had the lights down, and I was like, I'm just gonna run downstairs and grab something or whatever. So it was kind of dark, and my hand is going down the rail, and
Right. Because
and
that
I
makes
forget
sense.
I forget for a moment. I forget for a moment that hey, this rail stops one step short of when the stairs
Oh
actually stop.
gosh.
And I had my water bottle that I have with me all the time in my hand. Well, I get to the rail stops, and then I'm just ready to start walking, and I fall. It was one step though. It
The
was
fact that you
it was
said
literally
I was ready to start walking.
I was ready to start walking. I was like, we done walking downstairs. We good. We're going. But I had one more step.
One more step.
One
Just one
more.
more step. One more.
Yeah, and I kind of fell. I kind of fell a little bit, and my water bottle came down with me, and that was banging
Oh
all up against the wall.
no.
My husband is sitting downstairs, and he said it sounded like I fell down about 7 stairs,
Every
but it was just one. So he's panicking. He's like, Marsha, oh my God, and I fall perfectly to where like my shoulder goes down first and the water
uh-huh.
bottle hits the wall. And I'm just kind of in this corner and he scoots me up. But when I fell, I heard a pop in my ankle. And
Ooh.
I was like, oh my gosh, before I could even think about the pop in my ankle and him scooping me up and taking me to the couch down the stairs and looking at my foot as it was swelling up in my face. the first thing I could think of was, I'm supposed to be going hiking while we're here.
Oh
And I'm
gosh.
crying. I'm crying because I want to go hiking. Bump this injury. I want to go hiking. I was like, oh my God. And that was the first thing in my mouth. I'm supposed to go hiking. My husband was like, oh my God. Like, this lady.
Priorities, Marsha.
Yeah, this lady is crazy. And he was like, well, let's just get through the night and we're going to get you over to, to the they had the orthopedic doctor out there or something. I don't know. Ortho Carolina, excuse me.
Okay.
Ortho Carolina. And I went out there, and thank God it was a sprain. I thought I broke something because I heard something pop, and I was like really scared. So they did the X-rays, nothing broke. You sprung it, whatever. They put me in a boot, and I pretty much still went hiking in my boot. Yes, I did.
Listen, the tenacity of Marsha. I need everyone to learn a lesson.
I will hike before I leave here. That's what's happening. That's what I said.
I said what I said.
And then when we did the hike, it was a little short one, beautiful waterfall. I was like, okay, this isn't too bad. They gave me pain pills. Let's do a longer one the next day. God. I think I can put on my hiking boots with these pain pills. And that's what I did. Yes, I did. And then they was like, make sure you elevate your foot. So I did that one. I made it through. I was good. I got back. We elevated and iced. And then I was good when I got back home. I wore the boot for the timing that they told me to. But I was determined to get that hike.
I don't know what type of role model you are for the people. I just don't. I'm trying to figure it out. But
it sounds crazy to some, but I felt good about it.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes we gotta do what we gotta do. It's uncomfortable.
I feel good.
You know what scares me the most? I'm tired of people because they're like, "Oh, Nisha, once you hit 30, your body's gonna break down on you." I'm tired of these people talking about I heard a pop because I've never heard a pop, and I don't ever want to hear a pop. But people are like, "Yeah, I heard a pop, and then my hip. Yeah, I heard a pop, and then my knee." I don't want to hear no pops.
The pops are real.
I'm screaming to Jesus right now. Don't give me no pop because if I hear a pop, I'll be mad.
Lord, don't let her pop. The pops are real though.
The pops is real.
The pops are real.
Too many people hear pops.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what's happening. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm still young at heart though.
Right.
Don't let the pops fool you. That's why I went on that hike. That's why I did that.
Don't let the pops fool you.
I'm gonna hike.
You don't understand what you just started.
Hashtag don't let the pops fool you.
Hashtag don't let the pops fool you. I'm over it. I am so over it. But you know what? That ankle spray was uncomfortable. But you know what else is uncomfortable?
What was?
Communication.
Oh, it can be painful.
It can be painful.
Oh Lord. Oh my Lord. Yes.
It can be painful, but no, on something real. We're gonna jump into this conversation because I'm ready, and we're ready. And they listen. But the conversation that I want to have for us today, let me say that again because I tripped over a lot of words. The conversation that I have for us today is on communication, and it's on communication, and specifically when you've been wronged, because communication is so broad. Like we could be talking about so many things when we say communication, but I really want to narrow it in and hit on something that we can relate to. And something popped in my head, and I'm like, what about communicating when you ain't do nothing? Or at least you perceive that you ain't do nothing.
Right.
That's tough. And Marsha and I are chatting up about some situations that we've been in that required us to seek clarity from people when we felt like we were the ones that were being wrong. Yeah. And I was like, the podcast needs to hear about this because like sometimes when you're the wrongdoer, you're like it's easier to approach people because you know you got the apology, you kind of already processed your feelings because you have all the information. Like right. I know what I did to this person. I know I was wrong.
Right.
Like let me go. Right. Let me go or not go because some people choose the latter to this person and communicate. Well, how it's so tricky because it puts you in a position where your hands are kind of tied, where you're approaching a relationship to seek clarity, and the opposing party isn't leading the way.
You don't know what you're gonna get. That's the scary part.
Yeah, you don't know what you're gonna get. Right. You don't know what to expect. And how do we not get sucked into ineffective or even toxic patterns of communication when we kind of feel justified to be angry or shut down or belligerent or indifferent
Yeah.
because our feelings are hurt or we were wronged.
It's really tough.
You feel me?
It's really tough. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough thing to do, and it does take time because it could affect you. It could affect you in a way where when you get other relationships, it's like, well, wait a minute, what they mean by, you can
Right.
get paranoid, you can get triggered if somebody does something that's similar to that.
Yes.
But you really don't know what you're going to get whenever you're approaching someone about something like that, and you have to be ready to accept whatever their response is going to be.
Right.
And it could be
Girl.
hurtful, it could be a good thing, but you just
Yes.
never know what might come out of it.
Exactly.
Um, you know, I think that it's really important that on both sides, whether you're, the one that's approaching or the one that's being approached, is to just have healthy communication skills. And it's something that has to be practiced over time. I think counsel is a really good thing to help with communication. It's helped me a lot. But if you're not communicating the right way, then
Yeah.
the conversation is not going to be a good one.
Right.
Um, so I've actually been studying communication a lot since I've gone through.
Have you?
I have. I'm like, because it's like, what are these? Why are we responding to each other in the ways that we do? And in most cases, I mean, it's how were you raised?
Exactly. Girl, let's stop there because I was gonna
Right.
say the same thing. Like, okay, so no, I'm gonna listen. I am going to volley this ball back to you to say, what did you see when you were younger? Like growing up, what were you like indirectly taught about communication? By watching your
Ooh.
parents or your siblings or
Ooh, and no shade to my family, because
hey, no
but it's
shade.
real.
Learning, we
I love
grow
my
it.
family, but it was a lot of there were some quick temper moments,
Mm,
uh, maybe short fuse depending on what was going on.
yeah,
There may have been some yelling,
yeah.
um, and sometimes whenever there are conflicts, sometimes the apologies are not actually saying the words.
Ooh, they just like, you hungry? You want to
we're
eat?
just we're just
I
gonna
fix you
keep
some
it
food.
pushing. Yeah, we're just gonna keep it pushing. There may be some gifts involved. There may be
Mm,
or there may just we're just gonna be nice. But um that's just I've learned it's just not a healthy way of
yeah,
communicating, because you don't know how you affected somebody if you don't actually touch it.
right.
You know?
Hush,
You don't know how
hush.
you
I knew you was gonna do this to me. You gonna make me cry.
right.
You don't know. I'm gonna repeat it. You don't know how you've affected someone
Right.
unless you actually touch on it,
Yep.
bruh.
Bruh. Bruh.
Like
Yes, yes.
seriously,
Yeah,
and I think we miss that because we're juggling our pride, we're juggling our ego and our
absolutely.
defensiveness and our own feelings and our triggers and about like so many different things,
Hmm.
even to the point where we get to places um, where whether we're in a romantic relationship or in a friendship or family, that we just let go
Hmm.
of the relationship because either the other person doesn't desire effective communication or we're not in a place to have effective communication or both.
Yeah.
And then that's even more painful, right? Because now we got feelings of like abandonment and all these other things. And so,
Absolutely.
girl,
Yep. And I'll tell you, whenever you're communicating people, there are like the wrong ways that will get it to that point.
yeah,
It will be blame.
mm,
It could be defensiveness.
yeah,
It could be belittling,
mm.
labeling, sarcasm.
Girl,
It can be,
Marsha, why are you everything right now? Just do the podcast by
let's,
yourself. Do
yeah,
it.
diversion. It can be diversion. It can be stonewalling.
Yeah,
It can be somebody trying to fix everything. You're a fix.
yeah, trying
Let's
to
fix it.
own all of
Yeah,
the responsibility. Yeah,
and those are the ones that I've been actually looking at or whatever. Like,
yeah.
what are you using whenever you're communicating?
Woo!
Because it's really
Listen,
difficult for us as individuals to figure out, well, what am I doing and what am I not doing correctly when I'm
Right.
communicating? Because it's real easy to get to that point
To point,
fingers.
you.
Right. And if you're pointing, then you're going to be defensive and you're not hearing each other.
Right. And listen, for the people who don't know what stonewalling is like a level up from ignoring somebody. It's basically like acting like they don't exist. So if you ever been in a situation where, especially us married
Stonewalling.
people,
Yes. That's
where you can
stonewalling
go
can
and
show.
watch TV, they walk by, you don't even turn your head because you're mad. That's
That's
stonewalling, my people.
stonewalling can. It'll sneak up on you.
Listen, because people told you had nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all.
Right. So I'm just not saying that at all.
At all for days. You over there, I'm over here, hush.
Exactly.
No, but that's so real. And like the blaming and the name calling. And it's funny because have you ever heard of Brene Brown?
No, who is that?
Oh my
I'll
God.
have to look her up. Look.
First of all, you need to go. Yes. Go on Netflix and watch her Atlas of the Heart series on Netflix. It's actually a book, but I know people don't read these days. So I'm going to tell you to go on Netflix and watch it. And then if you want to read the book, go read the book. But one of the things that she mentioned in Atlas of the Heart, pretty sure this was her, is you mentioned sarcasm. And she said that sarcasm comes from the Greek word to tear flesh.
Wow.
Isn't that deep?
And it's so fitting at
It's
the
so
same
fitting.
time. Because I can see that.
Wow. Yeah, and we use it as humor. And we use it in place of communication. And one of the things, because you said you studied communication, and I love that. What? But one of the things I learned in my own study of communication is communication creates connection. And so it's almost like how many opportunities are lost to connect with the people that we love because we're choosing to do all the things that you mentioned instead of having a conversation.
Yeah. Yep. And one of the things that is missing a lot when you're having those conversations is empathy.
Girl, talk about it. What is empathy? Tell the people.
Now, when you start, I'll get to that. When you start talking about empathy, that's a trigger for me if you're not using it.
Oof.
Yes. I'm like, now, did you just hear what I said?
Right.
Like I need you to put yourself in my shoes and understand why I feel this way. And if there's no empathy, that's what empathy is. You're not putting yourself in the other person's shoes to see, like what would that feel like for you?
And I think people have a huge misunderstanding when you say put yourself in their shoes, because some people are like, well, if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't feel that way. But that's not what being empathetic means. It means that you're listening to the other person's emotion, whatever emotion word they're using. So if they're saying angry, think about a time when you were angry. And think about what that felt like for you then. So that person's telling you that they're angry. So that's the place you got to come from. You have to come from the place of you remembering that emotion and not you being in the specific situation that they were in and thinking, what would I do if I were in that situation? Because that's never going to, we're not the same people. So we're not going to do the same things. But if you're saying, I was really hurt by you, when's the last time you were hurt? What did that feel like? That's what that person's experiencing. Right?
Right. And I've actually sat in a counseling session where he actually talked about that, like putting yourself, and there were like steps to like how do you need to communicate. Do I have the step? I do have the steps.
Ooh, Marsha!
I'm gonna save some people some money. This come from a therapist.
Girl, you gonna save some people some relationships, some marriages.
And it's so funny because when I left it, I was like, oh my God, like he said, when you leave, you're gonna suck at this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and prepare you now that be prepared to suck at it, and you have to practice it, and it gets easier over time. And then you have to also recognize when you're flooded. Like if there's a flood of emotions, let's just take it back for a minute, and then we'll come back to it, because there are times where even within my marriage, if it gets a little too heated, I'm like, not right now. Not right now, because if I talk right now, I don't know what's gonna come out, and I don't want to make this worse than what it is. So give me a minute.
Right. I even use that same language with my children when I say my children, y'all probably freaked out. These are children. Y'all know I work with children. Anyway.
Yes.
But with my children, I'll say, like if they're screaming and yelling and trying to talk to me while they're screaming and yelling, I'll say, I need a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm angry. You're angry.
Mm-hmm.
So let us both calm down and then try to have a conversation with each other.
That's it.
Because boundaries and all of this is not just it's not just for your husband or your wife or your partner or whoever. It's for every relationship that you have.
Every relationship,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, yep, yeah. And
And
so
what
the steps.
girl?
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
So the steps that he was talking, the first one was validation,
Woo!
right? So in the validation is what you're saying to the person is, I can see why, and you're telling them why they're responding the way that they are.
Yeah.
So if they're angry, I can see why you were angry because of,
Yeah.
or I can see why you slammed the door when you left
Yeah.
because, but there's validation there. Like I can see
Yeah.
why you did this. So you want to start with that.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's when you go into the empathy. I felt that before.
Yeah.
So then you refer to a time in your life. You just mentioned it earlier. Like I've been angry before.
Yeah.
Like you go back to I felt that before and go back to a situation very briefly, but I experienced this when this happened in my life, and that's where the empathy
Mhm.
comes in. So you go from validation to empathy, right? After you do that, then from there, you will actually let's see, you actually kind of throw yourself under the bus, right?
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it's like, and so I can see why you were frustrated with me for doing XYZ,
Yeah.
right? So you're acknowledging where you're wrong. So you're kind of throwing yourself under,
Right.
right? So you're going from validating the behavior to using empathy to throwing yourself under the bus to
Yeah.
apologizing, actually
Hmm.
saying, I apologize.
Okay, break down for me for the people, not for
Mm-hmm,
me.
uh-huh.
Um what does apology look like? Because there are so many people who say, and I quote,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me so angry. Um, I'm sorry if you're mad.
Oh, that's terrible.
Girl,
Uh-uh. No,
girl.
that's terrible. That's terrible. So you just basically have to just go directly to what you did that triggered them. I am
Mm,
sorry I I disappointed you.
mm,
I'm sorry that I didn't protect you. I'm
oof.
sorry that I made you angry when I apologize. And it has to be something that's wholeheartedly done because sometimes in these steps and especially in the apology part, sometimes it's when that sarcasm can come in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you really have to dig deep and like really have some compassion and some grace. And I mean, you
Yeah.
have to get outside of yourself
Yeah.
and you really have to like really put yourself in that person's shoes and really I apologize,
Right.
without the sarcasm, because see, like I have these steps from counseling, right? And
I hear it.
I can go through these steps when I'm heated and then be like,
Right.
and I apologize.
Like, I apologize because I made you
Yeah,
angry.
right. It's got to be real, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, if you're flooded, wait,
And
because
I
a
think there's
lot
so
of
much power in that, right? Like telling, like giving yourself permission to take a moment
hmm hmm
and knowing that you could be so much more productive when you do that
absolutely.
and not make the situation worse.
And you also have to be
Yeah.
careful that in your waiting, that it doesn't turn into avoidance.
Mm. Girl, you cutting people up. I
You
don't know
see?
if you know it. You are cutting
Right,
people up.
right,
They're gonna
right.
click off right now. They're gonna turn it off.
Because I'm telling you,
So
you let too
real.
much time go by and it's like, oh, we good
I know
now.
it's starting to feel good. It
We
goes
good.
back to what you were talking about with your
Yeah.
family of like,
hmm
okay, enough time passed. I'm good. You good. Like, let's be good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, no, we kind of need to talk about this.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect time to do it because we're not both angry or whatever. And also, in doing that, you don't really know if the other party is really okay.
Yeah.
So if it's not addressed and it's like, oh, we're good and we're happy and we move on, then as soon as they get triggered, because those
Girl.
triggers will show up, and then it's going to remind them what happened
Oh
in
yeah, I was
in that
mad.
that conflict that you had that you just avoided,
Yeah.
and then it'll be like, just like when you did this last time, it'll come back. It'll come back to you,
Yeah.
So if you're not effectively communicating and
Yeah.
you're avoiding it, then it can come back in a trigger.
Yeah. Girl,
No.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
let y'all know that the next time Marsha gonna be saying, "What up, y'all? It's your girl Marsha," and this is the because I'm about to pass the
Listen,
torch. No, you're just saying such great things because I know I'm giggling and I'm laughing, but I think I'm doing that because I have lived out so many of these moments
me too.
of like what you're describing of bitterness,
Hmm.
bitterness just building up from lack of communication, from lack of validation. And everybody will like, there's so many people who are, I don't need to be validated. I don't need to listen. Everyone needs it. Everyone
Everyone.
needs to feel heard.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And if we don't, the bitterness builds up, the sarcasm starts, the stonewalling starts, the blaming starts. And from that point, sometimes it gets to the point, like you were saying earlier, that relationships end
Yeah.
instead of being able to be healed.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to avoid by talking about this. So, no, such great points.
Yeah.
That's such a great point.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's tough, especially when you don't come from, you know, just the way, the way you were raised, if you didn't come from that. And also, whenever you're in a marriage situation, when you come from two different worlds.
Yeah, girl.
And so, you have somebody that maybe come from a yelling house, then you have somebody that come from a house where they don't talk.
Right.
Now y'all got to figure out how to become one with those two different dynamics. That can be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. I That's why it's so important too to like do this work on yourself. Like it probably is so tempting to be like, I'm gonna send this podcast this person because they don't communicate. No, use it for yourself because the reality is it's like when you're communicating and you come from a different world as someone else, you got to know how to communicate on all different levels, not just the one you're used to.
Right.
And even with that, just paying attention to, and I'm gonna ask you this question, you're gonna be mad at me, but
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna ask anyway. But paying attention to your own habits. And my question for you is, what's your go-to toxic trait in
My go to
communication? Where you feel like you don't have to be the one to say nothing. Like you're like you did it.
Let me see. My go-to for the toxic. Let me go to the errors. I gotta think about it. You know what? To be honest with you, I think I would probably say it would have to be blame and maybe a little bit of defensiveness. I think all of us might have a little bit of defensiveness
Yeah.
in
Is
us.
yours is like though, like you got a whole army though. I have a feeling.
That I'll
Yeah.
argue.
No, you got a whole army defending you. I feel
Yeah.
like you good at it.
Yeah.
It's your fault and I hear all the reasons why.
Listen, let me tell you.
No, I'm trying to think
Man,
about mine. I feel like
I'm
mine
very,
is read them again. Read the toxic ones again.
all right. It's going to be blame and self-blame, defensiveness,
Mm,
belittling and
okay.
labeling, sarcasm, diversion, and that's going to be like redirecting the conversation, and
Yeah.
avoidance. That's
Yeah.
going to fall into that avoidance, stonewalling or fixing it.
I feel like I can do the sarcasm.
The sorry,
Hmm.
yeah,
And like I feel like it falls to the same category as like belittling.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like talking down, but not the way that you normally think of belittling.
Hmm.
But if you were to just be like, "Are you really mad about this?
Right,
Is something that you mad about?"
right.
Like you know what I mean?
That would be the sarcasm.
Right.
Yes,
And
yes,
minimizing other people. I think I had to learn not to minimize other people's emotions.
yeah.
Hmm.
That's important because everybody, like you
Yeah.
said, it goes back to that validation, empathy. Like it's important.
Yeah.
It's so important. So yeah, it's difficult. I'm gonna read you a scripture
Okay.
because it goes. And I this actually when I was studying the communication, I was like, oh my God, like this scripture came up, and I was like, wow. Now it goes back to what you said earlier when you were talking about fixing yourself first,
Okay.
right? All right. So it's in Matthew 7:3-5. Check this out. I was like, oh my God. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?
Mm.
How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite.
Mm.
First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye.
Mm.
Like, ooh. I was like,
Ooh.
ooh.
It's so real though, because it's like when we truly do
Mhm.
the work on ourselves and we don't spend so much time blaming and pointing fingers, we end up being able to, like what we're doing now, we end up being able to help other people instead of blame other people for their lack of
Right.
communication. It's like, here's what I did, here's what I do,
Mhm.
because you understand that you're part of the problem.
Right.
But when you exempt yourself from being part of the problem, well, now you have no work to do, and you have so much more time on your hands to blame. That's
Yes.
all you sit around doing.
That's the easy
Blaming.
route. That's the easy
Right.
route.
Right.
I'm
Right.
telling, because they have to look at yourself, and especially within a marriage relationship, because
Yeah.
you see each other all the time, and and it's like to actually turn things back to you and be
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, I am wrong in doing that, and no, I don't need to do that, and
Yeah.
the one thing that I got from that, when I was reading through everything and studying, it was just basically saying to address your issues first before you
Hmm.
try to address the problem you see in your spouse.
Yeah. And
And
it will soften the other person, right? Like when you can
it will.
pick out your own stuff, like they're more likely to take accountability.
Yeah.
Don't try to teach me nothing. Not why I brought you here.
It's a work. I'm telling you, it's like it never stops. And we're all growing and evolving, and we change. We're not the same person we were when we were 8, and we're not the same person we were when we're 18. And then when you're in your 20s and like you're just
Right.
not the same person. You're constantly changing, and that if the communication is not there, then I mean you can really destroy a marriage or just a relationship, any relationship.
Yeah.
Because you have to talk through it. Another thing that was there was trying to change whoever you're with,
Mm,
and if
that's it.
you're if you're you um, if you're focused on the speck in their eye and you're trying to change that and you're not changing yourself, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflict in that, you know
And I think we're
um
looking for things to control. And
yeah.
the reality is, like, we're kind of today and during this conversation, we're kind of telling you what to control. It's like control
Yeah.
your own communication, control your
Yeah.
own way of being when you get into situations where you feel like um, if things
Mhm.
aren't going right in that particular relationship. It's like, okay, what can I do
Yeah.
to
And it's
help?
and you said it earlier. It is amazing how when you start fixing yourself, how things just like all of the tension, all of the arguing. If when you just start fixing yourself, things just line up.
Yeah,
They just line up.
they
I can't
do.
explain it, but they do. you
Yeah.
know.
And I think you see things differently, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Like when you're constantly blaming, um, all you can see is what's wrong with someone else. And it's like when you start to work on yourself, you see, like, maybe I'm contributing to that person's business,
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
And I think that's what makes it easier because you find your place to be in control.
Hmm.
Okay.
Control is okay.
Oh, no, no, go ahead. Finish your
No,
sentence.
no, I'm just saying control is something hard to let go when you are the type of person that just, I got it, I like it this way, it needs to go this way, and
Right.
it's like that control is hard to let go. But
Let me tell you, because you were talking about earlier when you're in, especially like a marriage and you come from two different worlds. Like,
mhm.
I felt like when I got married, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Like, I jumped in being like, let me control this to make him communicate like I do because I'm clearly the most superior communicator. So he needs to learn. You still don't understand. No, I'm joking. He needs to learn how I do it so that everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And never once did I think maybe we both have some good ways of communicating and some not so good ways of communicating. We got to figure out what works for us
Yeah.
until, like you said, therapy and all of that. And so, yeah, I think like just like thinking of yourself, it's so easy to just like disregard working on ourselves, man.
It is. It is.
So easy.
Yeah, and it does again. It goes back to like where you come from because what did marriage look like for you growing up?
Mm.
What it and some people um get in marital situations and they're trying to prevent their marriage from being the marriages that they saw growing up.
Yes.
So, like, if there's something that mimics something that they've seen in that dysfunctional marriage, then it's like, oh no, we're not going to do that over
Yeah,
here.
we ain't gonna do
And
that.
you're trying to prevent that, and that causes more problems.
Yes.
That
That's
causes
such a
more.
good point. That's
Yeah.
such a good point because I came from a home, not the best communication, very loud, very disruptive.
Yeah.
Um, and so whenever we got into an argument that got loud, I wanted to control it because I was like, no, I told myself I'm not gonna be like that. I'm not gonna do that. But like, just because, and to your point about triggers and stuff like that, just because something looks like something you've seen doesn't mean it is what you saw.
Exactly.
And you got to be able to move through it and keep yourself calm to move through it as opposed to trying to control it. So that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Man,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know you was gonna come with the heavy hitters and everything.
And I always tell people when I talk to them, like, especially in a marriage, keep counsel very close to you because
Yeah,
again, you're constantly changing
right.
and you might need some help in how to communicate, and then get individual therapy because
Girl,
you probably bringing some stuff in that you didn't know you
girl,
were bringing in.
say it again.
So get you some individual therapy, and that's that working on you.
Yes.
So it's important. Therapy is
Yeah,
important.
it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Some other cool things I had written down too that we didn't really touch on is the importance of being a good listener, um,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of communicating your intention. I think sometimes we go into that situation, especially when we feel like we've been wronged. That person's already on the defense because they know they're wrong.
Right.
And so communicating an intention such as like, hey, I just want to get clarity, or hey, I love you and I just want us to be okay, but I feel like it's something we need to talk about, versus I'm mad and I need to talk about what happened, like, or what you did. Just like being able to communicate like your intention to get both people on the same page of like, we love each other, we want to work this out, we want to be good. A
Yeah.
lot of times helps soften both parties really.
Yeah.
And thinking the best in that other person, instead of going and thinking the worst. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And let me say it is so important for both parties to be on the same page there,
Mm,
because sometimes when you are trying to do the right thing and communicate and both parties are not on the same page, I mean, sometimes that's when you have to set a boundary.
yeah.
And it's that's the situation that you were referring to earlier. It may destroy a relationship,
Mm,
um, because if both parties aren't coming in compassion and empathy and like, okay, let's work through this, apologies, all those steps we talked about earlier with validating, throwing yourself under the bus, all of that. If we're not coming in that way, both parties' hearts aren't in the right place, then it's not going to work. It can't be one-sided.
yeah.
And then from there, you just got to give it to God from there.
Listen, I want to ask you, what does that conversation look like for you when you realize, oh, this person wants to be bad? They're not trying to empathize. They're not trying to validate, or maybe they don't know how. How do you kind of handle that um, with your own healthy way of communicating?
I would say boundaries are really important in
Okay.
that situation, and just seeking help and how to deal with it,
Okay.
because sometimes it can be confusing, especially when you like really love someone,
Yeah.
and you don't want it to go that way, but it's just not healthy.
Yeah.
Um, I say give it to God. I've said that earlier. You got to give
Yeah.
it to God, and just kind of get with yourself. And sometimes it just takes time.
Mm,
Sometimes it might just be a timing thing. It may be something where it just doesn't get back. And
mm,
whatever emotion that you have to get through, whatever healing that you need to get through, seek help to get that healing. And it's also still good to pray for that person.
yeah.
You know, my mom taught me when I was young, and she actually shared some of her experiences of praying for someone, even when you don't feel it.
Mm,
Because in this life, we feel things, and we don't want to ignore what we feel, but we also, we still do pray. And I believe that with prayer, those feelings that we have, they'll eventually, go away. It
Yeah.
does take time, but it may mean that the relationship will come back to what it was. It may end up that the relationship never gets back to what it is.
Mm,
But if you're in prayer, in constant prayer, and working on you and healing and allowing yourself to feel the feels, because they're there, you can't ignore that.
yeah.
Feel the feels, and seek God, and just let it pass and let it be what it's going to be. And I believe when you take that route, that no matter what happens, you'll be at peace with it.
Mm, that's good.
You'll be at peace.
That's
Um,
good.
so yeah, because there are a lot of hurts that can come along with that.
Yeah.
You know.
And and also being in a situation where, like you said, like you took it the time out to learn about communication, to study it,
Mm-hmm.
and we could be in relationship with people kind of on the same page. Like, you don't care about communication, I don't care about it. We both in our toxic cycles, and
Mm-hmm.
then one party decides, okay, I don't want this anymore. And sometimes that could be confusing for the other party to be like, but we was fine. We was all
Right.
right. What happened?
We were
We
good
just
while we
was
were
arguing.
toxic
Right.
together.
And that could be so challenging because I've been there too. It can be
Mm-hmm.
so challenging to start to set those boundaries. You're
Yeah.
gonna get a lot of pushback
Yeah.
when you were kind of toxic with someone and everything was okay, and
Yeah.
you've decided I want to do something different.
Yeah.
That's super
Some
challenging.
people don't know how to take that.
Mm-mm.
You
I don't
know.
think I would either if I was still in my stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've said this to you before. Like, it's all about breaking those generational curses.
Hmm.
Somebody has to start it. You know, if the communication is not healthy, and we keep carrying this on from generation to generation, somebody has to break it.
Yeah.
And there's a proper way to do it. And if it's not being done the right way, and the other party does not want to change, sometimes those relationships just don't work out.
Yeah.
But somebody has to break that cycle. Somebody has to,
Right.
you know.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Marsha. So what do you feel like we didn't talk about that you're like, okay, I need these people to know this. I need them to hear this before we go.
Let me see. I would say to just know that this is a trip for me. Maybe not for all people, but 70% of arguments are they're not resolved.
Hmm.
70%, that's pretty high.
Yeah.
So if you come in knowing that, and not wanting to win, and knowing that it's not about winning,
Yeah.
but just communicating effectively
Yeah.
and using that empathy, um, then communication would go, it would flow a lot better. So just know that going in.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
so true. Like with the unresolved conflict, it's like, how do you learn to live within things that may not either be resolved now or be resolved ever? Some people who late is gonna be late. I think somebody need to hear that. How
Right.
do you love them anyway?
Right. It's
No, but
like,
that's so good. That's such a good point
yeah.
of like, just how do you go into the conversation knowing that you're not necessarily going to win the argument, but how do you fight for connection?
Right. And that's where that work comes in. Those
Yeah.
steps, going back to those steps.
Yes.
Validation. I can see why. Those type of statements. Empathy. I felt that before.
Mm,
Put yourself under the bus. Acknowledge what you did wrong and apologize. And do
I
it.
love that.
Be real in doing it. Don't use any of those
Yes.
unhealthy. Don't use any of
Don't
those
tear
unhealthy.
flesh with the sarcasm,
Right. Yeah. Don't throw the
people. Don't
sarcasm
be
in it.
like me.
And don't be defensive.
Do what I say, not what I do, though.
Right.
I'm working on it.
It's a work. All of us.
It
And I
is.
also think that if everybody understands that we're all working on it, because you don't want to
Yeah.
get arrogant when it comes to this.
Yeah.
Just because I have these steps, you know what I mean? It's not like, well, I know
Yeah.
what to do. because
So I'm gonna do it every
listen,
time.
it's still a struggle for me sometimes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I want to take these steps and throw. I don't want to do the steps.
Right.
Listen to what I'm saying. This is what it's gonna be. But
Now let's watch this good on TV and her.
right. And I think that if we all understand that we're all working at this, and we all really working it, then we won't have you won't have to fight so much, because I can't say we won't have, because we're all still human. But
Yeah.
you can minimize pride.
Yeah.
You can minimize arrogance, because nobody has it all together. So just give yourself grace, give other people grace, have some compassion, and and set the boundaries where they need to be set, because I still feel that is very important. Whatever boundaries need to be set them, and love people anyway in the process.
Girl, and I think the message that you're preaching about grace, of just like having grace for yourself, having grace for other people, and having grace for the process.
Yes.
I'll say that right now. Some people will listen to this and be like, I got it, got the steps, let's go. But like knowing that it's gonna take time. If you've been doing the same thing for years and years and years, you're not gonna change it overnight.
No.
So give yourself grace to change one thing at a time.
Right. I saw a video. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
You're good.
I saw a video. Somebody had a pot in the kitchen, and they filled the pot up with water, and there was a huge fire, like almost like a forest fire. And they were like me trying to fix everything in an hour session with my therapist.
Right.
Just going over the fire. Like, it's gonna take some time. If you've been doing this for like 20 years,
yes,
it's gonna take some time. Just
give yourself grace. Do one thing. Change one thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay in the fight.
Love it.
Yes.
Podcast land, how do you feel? Relationships are tricky, but I hope you had something to take away from the conversation that we had today, and I hope you laughed a lot and cried if you needed to. Make no mistake, I would love to hear what you love most about this podcast episode, and if there's a topic that you're like, Nisha, you got to talk about this next, I'm here for that. Hit me up on Instagram, where I'm most active, at Unleash the Niche, and you can also find me on any other platform, most likely at Unleash the Niche. And if you think more people should listen to the show, you can help me get the podcast noticed by sending an episode to a friend, by writing a review on Apple Podcasts, or by continuing to share on social media. Marsha, I so enjoyed this conversation and got so much more out of it than I even thought that I could. Let the people know where to find Iconic Beauties and you if they need to. Go ahead.
Yes, Iconic Beautiful Voice. You can go to iconicbeautifulvoices.com. Also, we are on Instagram at Iconic Beautiful. You can check out all of our features, and you can book a shoot if you like, and just get some encouragement from all these beautiful ladies that are on there, because they are beautiful. You can get some merch like what I got on today. We got some merch, and that's where you.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I think this conversation is going to help so many people, just because it's another conversation that people don't talk about, but we struggle with every single day in our relationships.
Absolutely.
So
thank you for having
it. Yeah. Right. Come back anytime. I'm going to get both of y'all, you and your husband, and we'll work it out. But if you yourself want to go deep into the topics, laugh harder, join me over on Patreon. And if, again, those podcast episode ideas you have them, you can let me know on Patreon as well. On Patreon, you get the video version of the podcast, personal vlogs, and much more. You don't want to miss out on that.
This has been good.
Yay. Oh, I'm so happy. Did you have fun?
Yes. This was cool.
I love taking out with you, Marsha, and I love taking out with you guys today. Maybe we could impact the world or something. I'll leave it. Who knows? Bye.
All right, bye. Peace.